Given that Wolf has also edited the notes, I hope that he will join. So let's wait 2 or 3 minutes until we see who is actually coming. Hello, Ara. Hello, Wolf.
Hello.
Okay, let's get started. If someone joins in the next few minutes, they'll only be missing the intro anyway. Hello, this is a meeting of the CBOR working group. My name is Christian Amses. Barry Leber is also chairing, but not with us today. You all know this note well topic. It's about behavior. It's about various legal aspects. If you don't know if you're unsure about anything in there, feel free to contact me. And yeah, most of what we're doing today, especially on the agenda, is going to happen in the minutes. So I would encourage everyone to just open up the minutes. If you don't find the button, I'm also placing the link in the chat again. Apparently, yeah, thanks Marco for helping out with taking the notes, but this is an open editing field, so everyone please contribute. We have an agenda that is that is listed in the notes already. I'll go through very brief updates on where documents are that have left the working group or that are about to leave the working group. Then we can discuss a bit what next steps are on CDE and on DCBOR. And a few other points have been added on the status of time tag, which is in auth 48. On EDN literals, which is also already part of the status update. So I'll keep that short, given that we'll come back. And on CBOR and other working groups. I'll hand slide control. Is there anything that I'm missing that we should talk about today?
My slides.
Yes, your slides are what I'll hand over to as soon as I'm through the brief document status update.
Well, the slides are the document status update.
Okay, right. So slide control is with you already.
Thank you.
A few words from me just on that topic. EDN literals and grammar are both outside of the working groups, have received comments, ready or ready with nits or has nits, that level of things. Ayana has checked through them, so I expect a few reactions on the comments that we've received, but otherwise smooth sailing. The other documents that I wanted to talk about just briefly is more controls. Is a bit has received updates. Carsten has a bit on his slides too, so we'll come back to that. Or is it? Sorry, that's EDN literals. Carsten, is there anything you want to add there? Otherwise, I'll just.
Yeah, sorry, I have prepared this in my sequence, so I'm really confused now.
Okay, then I just not say much more than that, other than that I'll have to get back to AJ, who volunteered to do this as his first shepherding job, and so far I haven't been very supportive here. That's something I'll still have to take up. That was what I wanted to say. Given that the documents are in your sequence, Carsten, please go ahead. We'll update it here and then come back to the items that are not on your slides.
Yeah, I was hoping we could do this in this sequence because there is a certain sequence to this, and still take notes over in the notes. I was just going through all documents that are on our plate, and of course for most of them I want to do this really quickly. So the one document that is actually in RFC editor processing, or was in RFC editor processing until yesterday and is now in ISG processing again. That's CBOR time tag, and I see in the chat that Francesca is available to say something about this. So just to give the context, this has been in the RFC editor queue for half a year now, and came out. And while we were waiting for that, there was a pretty good review from Rohan Mahi, who was trying to use CBOR for his standardization activity and had a few observations. And some of these observations came into the time tag, and he found a bug. So we define one key for the map that we forgot to put into the IANA registry. Of course, this bug could just have been fixed, but then Rohan also mentioned that he really needed a critical version of this key. There are elective and critical versions of some keys. Some keys always are critical because they are kind of the core content. Some are always elective because they really only submit additional information, and some give the sender a choice. And Rohan said that maybe we should do this with a time scale key, which is the -1 in the approved internet draft. So we came up with a solution to add the numbers -13 and 13 for elective and critical. So they are nicely paired like all the others that have both choices, and call -1 legacy. And this is, I think, the point where Francesca can come in.
Yes, thanks, Carsten. I hope you can hear me. I'm on the move. Yes. So, yes, I wanted to, first of all, thank you for bringing this to the working group at the time. That was very good, and skipped a couple of steps now. But I thought, just to repeat what I said in the Auth 48 thread, the rest of the changes, of course, are approved now. But for this specific change, I think to follow process is to actually do another last call. I don't expect any objection. It seems pretty straightforward. And yes, it will add a couple of weeks delay, but I think that unfortunately it's necessary in this case. But it's just a couple of weeks, and then the ISG is already aware, and this does not need to go back on telechat. It will just be like a no objection sort of heads up to the ISG. So yeah, I already have initiated the last call. Like, you should see an email. At least I requested it. You should see an email starting a last call soon. And so that's it from my side.
Thank you. I don't want to justify what I did because Francesca is right. So let's have that IETF last call. But just to point out why I didn't think this was necessary, these new numbers for essentially the same information are entirely what the registry is about. So I could have put a file somewhere on GitHub and said, oh, by the way, -13 and 13 mean this, and then have asked IANA to register these, and that would have gone through. And it just seemed to me that maybe it's better to have that file not somewhere on GitHub, but maybe in the document itself. So this is where how we came to this point. And now we'll have another IETF last call and probably only get this published in July. Okay, so that's unless somebody is completely opposed to adding -13 and 13. I think that's all we need to say about this.
Brief question, Chairhead, of how legacy will -1 be? I mean, is that the cool point that's completely wasted? Has this been used so much? Given that the document is still not published, can we just like earmark this for like use this as last of the easy points, and then like 10 years down the road we can still use this?
I don't think we can do that. So this draft has been out 7 years. And we have only added timescale relatively recently, but much of this draft has been picked up in various places that we don't even necessarily know about. So I think I would be very careful with reusing anything here. And given that we want to keep the backwards compatibility with people who are using -1 now, I think essentially we need to provide that forever.
Okay, thank you.
Good. The other document that is in ISG processing and doesn't require working group action is the update grammar document. So we had a IETF last call, and there were some observations from the reviewers, but nothing that I think requires a new draft. So I think we are waiting for Ori to actually determine the same and initiate the ISG balloting process, or maybe there is something that we might be learning right now. So Ori, can I put you on the spot?
Sure. I think last I recall, updates to this were made, and this is ready to go ahead. So I'm not sure why it still says waiting for AD go ahead. I recall that this item should have progressed. So I'll have to get back to you on that. But I have confirmed that you did address comments that I gave for this piece.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure there are no surprises that require working group action at this point. So the other document that completed IETF last call is EDN literals, and which has morphed into essentially defining EDN in a complete document at this point. And we got lots of good input. I think there are 7 issues open in GitHub right now. And I think we should spend the better half of this meeting going through these points. Juan.
Hey there. Just a general comment here that there were some updates to CDDL, which just but basically rather than say we're going to completely replace CDDL, these were done as like, here's a list of errata to CDDL.
Yes.
And there was a comment which I quite agreed with, which was, it would have been easier for implementers to read if we had just replaced the old, if we'd done like Abyss and just replaced the CDL RFC with a new one that incorporated those. In the same way, I'm just going to say like, I have no objection to moving forward with this document in the style that it is, but I think it would be far cleaner and far easier for implementers if EDN was defined in its own its own RFC, and the title and the way that it is titled, it just said this is CBOR extended diagnostic notation, and then the working group would decide what literals to go in it. Yeah.
Okay, so
you can take it or leave it. It's not a big deal.
Thank you. So basically, the update grammar on the previous slide, that is one of a set of maybe 3 or 4 updates we want to do to CDDL. And when we have done all these updates, then might be a good time to actually pull these all together into a new version of the document. But doing this in the middle of the updating process doesn't sound particularly efficient to me. So much on the update grammar thing. Otherwise, I do agree, and we spent a lot of time doing 8949 based on 7049, and this was time absolutely well spent. But I think we have to get those updates through first. So on EDN literals, this has been a little bit of an unexpected development because the document really started out as just application-oriented literals. And then people said, oh, can't we have ABNF with that? And of course we can have ABNF with that. And can't we have media types, and so on and so on. So the document has expanded a little bit beyond its original remit. And maybe it's actually time to change the title. But we didn't do this so far. And of course, given that we went through one IETF last call already, this is a heavier change than it would have been half a year ago. Okay, so we will get back to that in a couple of minutes. Then we have the more control document where we had 2 recent observations. Don't remember whether it was before or after the official end of the working class call, but they are still valid observations. One was that the definition of .join was pretty bad. Actually, the definition was fine, but the explanation of our expectations of what an implementation actually can do was pretty sloppy. So PR number 5, which I merged today, is trying to address that. And then there was the observation that the text about the base 64 operators wasn't entirely clear about the strictness, and it was kind of implied, but it's now explicit in PR number 6. So based on that, I submitted a -05, and I don't think we can really discuss this now unless somebody already has read this. But in the next few days, I think the working group should decide whether this is actually ready for submission, or we need a second working group last call, or how we actually are going forward with this document. So I mostly wanted to point.
I've had a brief look at the pull requests. It looks to me like those are small enough that we don't have to go through another working group last call. Let's wait until, say, end of the week, and if someone speaks up to that. But other than that, should be fine.
Sounds good. By the way, your note is echoing. Don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm soft muting myself when I'm not talking. If I do still echo, then please.
Yeah, that works. But when you're not muted, you're echoing, which usually echo suppression is supposed to handle, or echo compensation actually. Good. So we have a document that completed working group adoption call in May. And I think we could make this draft now. I haven't seen the conclusion, of this adoption call.
Yeah, that's that is not that's on me. I'll have to check. I'll have to check whether there was anything I missed and then tick the box.
Thank you. We have a document that is in post working group last call exploration, as I'm trying to phrase it. We have a completed working group last call, but some of us still don't quite feel comfortable with the level of implementation we are working with. So this is kind of done in the working group, but it might need a little bit more feedback from implementations. That's why it's in this weird limbo state. And we probably should dedicate an interim to that, and probably together with a packed by reference draft, which is supplying additional components that will be of interest to people who want to use CBOR packed. So this is just the status.
Carsten, one thing like I'd like to ask you is that could you update the list of could you update the additional resources or in the repository, make links to existing implementations that would help get this on smoother?
Can I do this in a working group document? I always thought this was chairs only.
I think that you can do this as an author, but if you
Let me try.
cannot, please just send me through any channel what I should put in there.
Thank you. Okay, then documents
Sorry,
that.
I jump queue for a second on that.
Sure.
Yeah, so you as an author, you should be able to update the additional references piece. You can also add to the draft itself pointers to implementations and a comment about their status, and the RFC editor will remove it. I have a question about the draft CBOR packed by reference versus the CBOR packed, which you're saying CBOR pack 12 is waiting for implementation feedback, but this new draft packed by reference has additional functionality. And I wonder if the working group considers that additional functionality to be like ready to be tested in implementation. Like perhaps these drafts don't need to be separate if there is implementation requirements for both. I guess I don't have enough context on packed by reference and its relative maturity, but if you're waiting for implementation feedback on CBOR packed, like maybe you consider waiting until you have implementation feedback for packed by reference. Has it been discussed previously? Sorry if I missed it.
Merging, as far as I know, has not been discussed. Generally, packed by reference is exercising an extension point, so there's no technical reason to merge that in. I can't say anything as a working group chair on the document because I'm the author, but from an author's point of view, I'd be happy to merge it in if that helps. Yeah, Carsten, any opinions from you?
Yeah, so the observation from the architecture of this draft, we try to make sure that we have two separate areas, the table setup and the table referencing. The table referencing seems to be stable at this point in time. And it actually would make sense to push this through, except that this doesn't make a lot of sense without batteries included. So we have actually two very simple forms of table setup that go into this CBOR packed draft as well. Now, packed by reference is another table setup mechanism. It's not changing the reference set, it's changing or adding the table setup mechanism. And I expect applications to actually go ahead and also add table setup mechanisms. So DNS CBOR, which we're not going to talk about today, that might want to set up a table setup mechanism that is optimized for DNS. So we expect the reference mechanism to be part of the core CBOR machinery that you implement in all situations where you need packed. we expect the table setup to be a little bit more application specific. So I'm not that wild on putting additional batteries into the CBOR pact document. But I mean, if this is a good battery, let's put it in. Okay, but maybe we should have implementation feedback on that one as well. Okay, I think it's clear what we want to do there. Then documents ready for working class call. We have a few issues open on CDE, but these seem to be editorial tweaks. And I'd like to know whether the document itself now is ready. So do we just fill in those editorial nits and then go to working class call, or is there any major discussion that we still have to have about CDE? So that's one question I have. And of course, the other question I think has already been pretty much answered on the mailing list. So how are we going to process CBOR? And I pointed to the no response specification that we once worked on in the core working group, which became an ISE draft, an ISE document at the end, but is still in active use by the working group. So that's essentially what I see as the way forward, because the consensus of the working group appears to me to be pretty rough, speaking as an author. So I like the thing, particularly because it demonstrates the concept of a CBOR application profile. And it is also providing an answer to the people who are really struggling with this integer float issue in their environments. But it may not be the main line of development of CBOR, which is okay for an application profile. Two questions. Wolf. We are not hearing you.
Okay, Wolf is trying to fix his audio.
Yeah, maybe we can go to the first question quickly.
So on the first question, my impression is that it's rather ready. I'll just open a quick show of hands tool here that you can fill out while I'm preparing, and you can fill out while we're discussing the other thing.
Hey, so just one of the observations I have about CBOR CDE is that there is, the main section, section 2, it basically has a bunch of history, and then it describes what the actual normative requirements are, and splitting those up. Like being kind to implementers by saying, okay, this is the section, you jump to this place, this is where you actually go and need to read what you need to go and what you need to go do. That's a nice structure to have, so that it's really obvious, like, what does this really do? Well, I'm happy to make a short PR for that.
So would moving the history to an appendix solve that problem?
Even just adding a single section,
Okay.
like adding a new section header at the beginning of where you actually talk about,
okay,
do this.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to your PR.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Carsten, I was just curious. Obviously, not all voices in the working group say agree that CBOR should move forward in any sense, but that, and I agree that means rough consensus, but that is, I'm not sure how that's dispositive in terms of how the ID should move forward, given that there is a consensus that seems to be, certainly a plurality. In other words, how do we dispose of which track it moves forward on, based on the fact that at least one person continues to raise objections to it, but that person has had their concerns addressed multiple times by multiple people.
Yeah, there is more than one person. Anders is probably the loudest person, and his objections might drown out the other feedback, which was, yeah, sure, that works, but I don't need it. And for instance, Lawrence seems to have that position.
Well, I mean, obviously, since I've joined the WG, there's a number of things discussed that I don't need, but that doesn't mean I object to them moving forward.
Let let me jump in here with one more voice of soft objection here, with obviously my chair hat off. I'm in a similar position there, that it's like, it's okay if people use it. It's something one can do. But taking it up as a working group item, to me, would be endorsement of doing it this way. And it is something that I would not recommend people to do unless they have very strict requirements that force them into that direction. One effect this could have, if it is taken up as a working group item, and something similar has happened in core with QBlock, is that as part of the joint of the working group opinion finding there, a lot of caveats on the applicability of the document get pushed in. So that might weaken the document as a whole for those users, whereas the independent track enables the authors to focus more on their use case and what it can do, without having to satisfy all the tick marks that would lead to working group endorsement.
Okay, I definitely appreciate that point of view. I would only request and hope that people who do have objections or otherwise raise them in lists, so I can, document them and, if necessary, respond to directly, rather than hear about them, through, this isn't exactly a back channel, but you know what I mean. I would prefer these things be openly discussed on the list by those who have these objections that may determine how this ID moves forward.
That is something that I can start a short thread of, that just kind of basically flushes out those points.
I would definitely appreciate that.
Okay, Juan asked whether sort order of maps was explicitly removed, and it certainly wasn't. We have an issue on the CDE document that this is currently maybe a bit too implicit and needs to be made more explicit. So that would be one of the remaining edits that we do to the CDE document before going for working group last call.
Just briefly coming back to the show of hands that is still running, has everyone had a chance to file their points on CDE? Noting that this is a show of hands. There is no need to kind of not vote just because you're an author or something.
Yeah, so if you look into the top menu on your webpage, there is the two speaking bubbles and the bar graph, and the bar graph is what you need to click to get to the poll. think it's no longer moving.
I think I've soft muted myself once more. Sorry. Speaking of the queue, Wolf, are you still? Is there something you would like to add because you're still in the queue?
No, I apologize. That's a mistake.
No problem. Thank you.
So while we maybe wait for a few more seconds, there is the last line on that slide. That's of course not a question for the working group, but a question for the designated expert. I'm not a designated expert on this document because I'm a co-author.
Yeah, sorry. I saw that there was a mail that you said basically 201 is now in a shape where where the authors agree that this has some meaning. With that, I'll revisit this. Sorry for the delay. Thanks for the pointer.
Thank you for that.
Okay. So do you want to close the poll?
Yes. So that's not. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Marco, for taking that down. In the minutes, three raised, one not raised, 5 no opinion. Not to strong a point. If there are concrete objections to raise to doing a working group last call, like please let me know. Otherwise, I think it's not strong, but it's strong enough that a working group last call would should flesh out the rest. So I'll start one.
Yeah, and one implementer who has had strong positions on this is not here today. So maybe we can, in our heads, add him to probably ready for working group last call. But the working group last call, of course, is the decision point here, and this is just finding out whether we should go to it. Okay, if we are done with deterministic, I have 4 more slides on things we need to work on. The modules document is pretty stable, with the exception of the treatment of sockets. And we haven't managed to actually do a prototype of that yet. So it's not yet in the document, but it's definitely on the set of things that we want to do. Then we have documents that aren't really meant to be published. And the draft numbers document, how to handle numbers in CBOR numbers in drafts that use CBOR, that has received a number of revisions. And I think at some point we should decide whether we can adopt this as a working group document, just to indicate that we care about this document and it's not a completely individual submission. But again, that's not something we have to do now. But the next time you use this document, maybe spend a couple of minutes thinking about whether this could be a working group document. Then we have a number of documents that are in a formative phase. I already mentioned DNS CBOR, which uses CBOR packed for or other approaches for DNS messages. The Yang stand-in document, which will solve a lot of problems that we still have with textual information in Yang CBOR, and the Yang metadata proposal, which just makes Yang CBOR cover a little bit more of Yang. The Yang CBOR work has been in core before. It's now here in CBOR for several reasons. One is that I'm not a working group chair, so it's easier to work on here. And the other is that really this is no longer about the request response aspect, which is still worked on in the core working group, but this is about the way we use Yang in there. And finally, there are 6 more documents in various stages. The notable tags document that just collects information about tags and actually registers a few. The deterministic encoding explainer that requires some tender love and care, but that might as well go the ISE track. I don't know. Let's see how this document develops. CDDL CSV, I don't know if anybody here cares. Again, this might also go the ISE track. And then we have 3 documents about future work on CDDL. And these are also kind of living documents which get plugged for pieces that go into the actual drafts and probably will vanish at some point in time. Okay, that was this part. Then I would propose that we go into the issues of EDN literals.
Yep, let's do that.
And we lost our AD.
He'll come back. For the issues, do you want to screen share, or do we just do this orally and by adding notes, orally and with the notes?
I was hoping somebody could screen share because my Mac simply overheats if I do that.
Okay, I'll give it a try. I have one more browser. I have one more screen to do this on. So share screen. Gotta revoke. Take that back. Share screen. Yes, and that would be. Yep. Does this look good for you?
Yes.
So EDN literal has a few open issues.
Right.
And I suppose that should be a size that works for you.
Yes. So let's start at the bottom because that's the oldest one. That is, of course, a good observation. I mean, making this change actually has no consequence whatsoever. But it's confusing to have the superfluous production in there because it never can be reached. So this is removing dead code. And you can now play with the version without the dead code. The EDN ABNF prototype is now using the revised grammar. So given that this is a technical change, why we are in ISG handling, Ori probably has to say something about that, and that's why he stepped out. Oh, he's back. Ori, is this okay?
Sorry, I literally just got back to my desk.
Yeah.
Apologies, I had to step out for a brief moment.
So Christian found some dead code in the ABNF. This S at the end is never reached because the spaces are already gobbled up earlier than that. Can we make this change?
If it helps, my implementation that is based on that very grammar has an assert in that this S will always be empty, and I haven't yet managed to trigger that.
So if it's a bug and it's confirmed in multiple implementations and there's some evidence of that being confirmed on the list, I think it's potentially okay. I need to unpack a bit more what's being proposed here, but my gut feeling is that if implementations have confirmed this is not an issue and that's documented well, it should be okay. But again, I would want to confirm all of that on the list.
Good. Next issue. Yeah, and again, Christian, who's implementing this, noticed that we haven't said what encoding indicators say for long numbers. So long numbers have always been a part of diagnostic notation. So we don't need an extra notation for tag 2, 3 big integers. But it never has been clear what kind of encoding indicator we might want on that. And actually, it turns out we might want 3 encoding indicators: one for the tag encoding, one for the encoding of the head of the byte string, and one to count the overall size of that byte string and or any leading zeros. leading zeros are not in the preferred representation, but the encoding indicator is exactly there to handle non-preferred representations. And so that's maybe something we could be doing, but we probably don't need to do this now. So I have labeled this as possibly leave to extension, and I would prefer to capture this here, and maybe once we do a set of extensions like the EREF stuff, which is already in the pipeline, we do this kind of extension here. This is a well-defined extension point in the document, and if by then we know what we want to do here, it would be easy to add this as an extension.
So from my reporter point of view, that sounds fine with me. Like the one thing that I really needed and that I didn't get out of your response is that long integers are supposed to be to just go to tag 2. If we don't have any encoding indicators for that, and the encoding indicators are left for like the fully diagnostic notation, that's fine with me.
Good. Yeah, they are meant to go to tag 2 and 3. So this is one thing we actually may want to clarify in the document. Okay, so that was that. Then in Rohan's review, there was a proposal to change the approach of handling the AppString construct. So the AppString construct is an extension of the existing byte string notations. And the existing byte string notations have some internal syntax. And the current document essentially treats all those constructs the same by saying we parse this as a UTF-8 byte string, and then hand the parse result to the specific application extension, and we treat H and B64 and so on exactly the same way as everything else. And Ron wanted to integrate this into the main syntax, and I'm not surprised that he found that this is a bit complicated. So I would not have recommended this approach. And
no, actually, I found the approach in the draft complicated, having to run ABNF twice. I think it's actually like rewriting the ABNF so that there is a single ABNF for all the app strings and an extensibility point that allows you to create a new app string and integrate that. That seems more straightforward, but.
So my experience implementing this was that the nested part works quite well, for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's about 2 lines of code for me. So of course, every platform is different. So I think that this is good feedback about other platforms, but given that it has turned out to be not that hard to handle it the way it is now, and the risk we get from trying to integrate the ABNFs, I would prefer if we stuck to the 2-layer model.
So in other words, you're saying you're afraid that doing it with a single layer of ABNF is going to be hard.
No, you told us that it's hard, and
no. I'm saying that it's that conceptually trying to figure out what the heck is happening when there are 2 layers of ABNF is it. First of all, it was I did not find it clear. So if we're going to stick with 2 layers of ABNF, the text should be more clear that you run the ABNF once, and then you run it a second time for app strings. So that was not clear to me when I read through the document. But my overall view was, well, I had already gone and written my own ABNF for the based on the original non-normative description that was a single integrated ABNF. And why we need a second layer of ABNF when we could, from my perspective, it's just as easy, actually easier to go and write it a single time and have a single ABNF and just add an extensibility point. That seems perfectly straightforward. So if what you're saying is the reason that you want to stick with 2 layers of ABNF is that it was hard, then I'd be happy to go and write up an ABNF in a single layer that I think is, arguably going to be shorter, or at least, is no worse than what you've got now.
What I would find confusing about 2 layers is that could 2 layers not alter the way the parsing happens? So right now, even if I don't understand what age or any of the extension points mean, I can parse them. I can process them to the point where I say, okay, this is something I don't precisely understand. Worst case, I can turn it into tag 999, but it doesn't upset like my command recognition. If the age and other application-oriented literals had their own ABNF, I'd have to, if I were using a tool that processed them all the same in the first pass, I think it would be hard to prove that those are.
No, you misunderstand me. This is not about the same. This is all the ABNF that is integrated in one ABNF, not in 2 ABNFs. So if you know about single quoted strings without an app string, you know about H, and you know about B64, then you parse the ABNF for all of those. And if you encounter a string that you don't know, you parse it in the same way that you do any other generic app string. If you know more, then you parse them with the ABNF that you do know. So that said, basically the output of the algorithm is the same. You just run your ABNF once instead of twice.
But would then that, it's not an issue for H and B64, but would then the ABNF for all other application strings also need to describe escaping and line breaks and Unicode escapes and stuff?
So for IP, for example, that's a new app string, right? So you would just describe it using the ABNF productions that are already provided, and when you do that, it just works, right? You don't. It's not like if you're using only existing productions and all of the productions are there, all the pieces are there, then you don't need to go like off, wandering off in the wilderness on your own. The tools are all there. You just use the existing productions.
The problem we run into is that ABNF doesn't really have a plug-in concept. So you would need to define how does an extension point, how does an app string, app prefix extension actually define the ABNF, and how is it integrated into the existing ABNF? And the 2-layer concept abstracts this out nicely.
I mean, I disagree that it provides you with any actual abstraction. It just means you need to run code twice. But because either way, the list of ABNFs that you need to run, when you run the second pass, you need to run a list of ABNFs, and you need to integrate the new app string into that second list instead of just integrating it into the first list. So for me, the work is no different. And it's not like this hasn't been this is a known problem with ABNF, but it's one that we have lived with for SIP, for mail, for a bunch of other applications that use ABNF. And lo and behold, we keep using those protocols, and they keep working, and we keep extending them and keep adding things to the ABNFs, and it still works.
That's maybe related to the fact that those extensions are all official extensions. But
no, in SIP extensions, most extensions are not official extensions, and yet they continue to work.
And you have to touch the overall ABNF each time you do such an extension.
It's true, yes.
Well, my soft engineering hat is just starting to burn.
And I will point out that touching the second layer ABNF in those production environments is no better than touching the first level ABNF.
Okay, that is experience I don't have.
Maybe we should cut this short. Ori probably is either saying the same, or otherwise I'd like to ask him to still go ahead.
So as an individual, I find it difficult to have to look in multiple places to understand these things. So I have a slight individual preference for a single ABNF for this revision, if it's possible to achieve it. I think the discussion that was just had on, what's the impact on multiple ABNF when you have to look at layer 1 or layer 2 is exactly the kind of thing that we need to see discussion on the list regarding. So it feels to me like there's more to discuss here on this point. But again, all of this is a comment as an individual. That's it.
Okay, so let's take it to the list. Yeah, that's another big can of worms.
Just brief reminder, we have 3 or 4 minutes left, so
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because it's really the significant change that is being proposed here. When we updated EDN while writing up CDDL, we added a way to concatenate strings, and this way is getting in the way of other grammar changes we might want to do. So one question that came up was, do we maybe actually resign that feature and use the new freedom to do a few things that people have explicitly requested, but we had to turn them down because the concatenated strings are in the way. So that's a pretty big change pretty late in the process. But it also might be a liberating one for further developing this syntax.
Unless someone has immediate comments, let's look briefly at the rest of the issues, because that's probably something people need to think about if they haven't seen the issue yet.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is just a question whether tags like 888 and 999 introduced here maybe need a different processing from other tags. So this is not a giant technical change, or actually it's not a technical change at all, because it just gives guidance for implementers, but guidance for implementers, of course, is always important. Okay, Ruhan is one of the users of this concatenation thing, or would like to be one of the users of this concatenation thing, and points out that using plus would work for him.
But it would be as a user, it would be a big change, but it would be a welcome one, whether it's plus or dot or anything.
Yeah,
it opens up other things. So if it's not too late, why not?
Okay. Yeah, Ori points out that we want to have all these issues closed, including the directorate reviews. Can you go back to the list of issues? So there's an obsdir, a secdir, and a genart review that I'm aware of. The genart appears to be a purely editorial thing, and the other ones have a little bit of technical content. Security considerations, of course, always have technical content. So some writing is needed there, but that is probably not going to change the technical content, but just provide additional guidance. So these are the top 3 of the 4 issues. So if you have suggestions for how to do these are, of course, welcome as comments in the GitHub or comments on the mailing list or PRs that we could use.
Okay, thank you. As I don't see anyone running up to the queue, there's one pointer that I'd like to share here still that Carsten provided us, that Mimi content document on instant messaging is using CBOR. So there's a mail thread on the list. You might want to have a look at it. Other than that, we are already a bit over time. So as Carsten said, please have a look at the issues on EDN literals, provide your input there. Chairhead on, I don't have a good idea yet of what it would precisely entail to go the concatenation route. So it would probably set us back a bit. Might be worth it. That's especially something where I'd like to have input. One?
Yeah, I posted on the list about the Mimi content format, and I just wanted to encourage anyone who has some spare cycles to just have a glance at it and post comments on the Mimi list.
Yeah, and as with my author hat on, I would like to thank Johan for bringing all these observations to the working group. This is really good that somebody comes from outside and stirs the pot a little bit. And we will certainly have a better specification because of that. Okay.
Good. With that, thanks everyone who contributed to this meeting. Thanks, Marco, for taking notes. See you all on the mailing list or in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.